Good morning, class. It's Mr. Pointer. I hope everyone's doing well and being safe. Today, we are going to be working on data and graphs. However, before we get started, I want to do a quick review on some multiplication. So before we get started, I need everybody to go ahead and grab their journal or grab a pencil and a sheet of paper. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds. So I'm gonna put some problems on the board and I want you all to try and solve them. Now remember, we have a rule that we solve each problem using two different steps. So we're gonna start off with an easy one. So we have 7 times 8. Now some of you all can do this in your head using mental math. 7 times 8. Which gives us 56. Now, if we didn't know our 7s or our 8s, we can use the associative property to help us solve this problem. So instead of doing 7 times 8, I could do 4 times 8 plus 3 times 8. And you might ask, well, where did that 3 and that 4 come from? Well, if you look at the 7 here, we just broke the 7 down into two factors. 4 plus the 3 give us 7. So notice 4 times 8 gives us 32. 3 times 8 gives us 24. We combine those two products together and we end up with 56. Let's try another problem. Five times 12. Now we know that answer, 5 times 12 is 60. But how do we get 5 times 12 is 60? Well, we can do the same method and break the problem down into smaller problems. Now, think about some ways to create the number 5. I was going to add them together. So if I was going to add 5 together, I could use 3 times 12 plus 2 times 12, which would give me 36 plus 24, which is also 60. So notice how I used the equation and used the associative property to give myself smaller factors to work with in order to solve the problem. And that's just a quick review for today. Now moving on to our lesson for today, we are moving into data and tables. So the most important thing you want to look for on a table or a graph is you want to look for the key. So for example, this key for this particular problem is going to be, let's just use a circle. So this circle is going to equal, let's just call it 6 votes. That circle equals 6 votes. And we're going to now break our graph down into some pieces. So here's our graph here. You notice our graph has an x-axis and a y-axis. And we're just going to look at some different things and try to figure out some problems. So let's look at some names. Let's try David, John, and let's say Michael. So we have David, John, and Michael. Now using what we know about the key and the votes, let's say David has 3 circles. How many votes do you think that would be for David? Do you think that would be 3 votes? No, that wouldn't be 3 votes. because each circle is worth 6 votes. So David would be 3 sixes, which is 18. Let's look at John. Let's say John only had 1 circle. How many votes do you think John should get? Yes, John would have 6 votes. Now I'm going to try a tricky one. Let's say we have Michael has a whole circle, and then Michael has a half circle. How many votes do you think that is for Michael? Well, first I have to ask myself, what would half a circle be? If a full circle equals 6 votes, a half a circle would equal how many? 3, exactly. So Michael has his first circle, which is 6, his second circle, which is 3, so Michael actually has 9 votes. Let's try another one. And this time I want you all to see if you can solve this one on your own. So this time, instead of using a circle, we're going to use a square or a rectangle. And this rectangle is going to be called 4 students. It's a little smaller. A little bit better. 4 students. And these students today are picking their favorite classes. So we have the first student, we have for math. The second subject, let's call it science. And our final subject is health. Now we look at the first subject, we have a full rectangle, another full rectangle, and another full rectangle. For science, we have just a full rectangle, and for health, we have a half of rectangle. I want you all to try to figure out how many students picked each subject. Let's look at math. We have 3 rectangles, and each rectangle is 4 students. So how many students do you think chose math? Well, we have 4, 8, 12. How many students do you think chose science? We only have 1 rectangle, and each rectangle is 4 students, so we would have 4 students for science. And for health, we have half a rectangle. We know that half of 4 is 2. Now, with this lesson, after you've kind of broken down the data this way, you're going to have questions to answer. So let's think of some questions that you might see when you all are working on this assignment independently. For example, one question might say, how many more students picked math than picked health? Well, think about when we talk about how many more. When we talk about how many more, what operation should you be thinking? Yes, subtraction. So how many more students picked math than health? Well, if 12 students picked math and 2 students picked health, when I go to solve that, I would get 12 minus 2, which gives me 10. So 10 more students picked math than they picked health. Now, when you all go back to Google Classroom, you are going to see the entry task for this lesson. The entry task will have an attachment inside of it that will have a graph. Make sure you use the graph to answer the questions. Now, last week I passed out, well, I didn't pass out, but last week I assigned some questions inside of Google Classroom, and I noticed that some students did not answer all the questions. You have to be very careful that when you all are solving these questions today, make sure you answer all of the questions that are in Google Classroom so that you can get full credit. I'm looking forward to seeing some of your responses.